Hawaiian folklore, public domain reading. A giant's rock throwing. A point of land on the northwestern coast of the island of Oahu is called Ka Le o Kaena, which means the Cape of Kaena. Out in the ocean, a short distance from this cape, lies a large rock which bears the name Oahu o Kauai, or Rock of Kauai, a large island northwest of Oahu. This rock is as large as a small house. There's an interesting legend told on the island of Oahu, which explains why these names have for generations been fastened to the cape and to the rock. A long time ago, there lived on the island of Kauai a man of wonderful power. His name was Haupu. When he was born, the signs of a demigod were over, and around the house of his birth. Lightning flashed through the skies and thunder reverberated, rolling along the mountainsides. Thunder and lightning were very rare in the Hawaiian Islands and were supposed to be connected with the birth or death of some very unusual occurrence in the life of a chief. Mighty floods of rain fell and poured in torrents down the mountainsides, carrying the red iron soil into the valleys in such quantities that the rapids and the waterfalls became the color of blood. The natives called this a blood rain. During the storm and even after sunshine filled the valley, a beautiful rainbow rested over the house in which the young chief was born. This rainbow was thought to come from the miraculous powers of the newborn child, shining out from him instead of from the sunlight around him. Many chiefs throughout the centuries of Hawaiian legends were said to have had this rainbow around them for all of their lives. Haupu was a child, and he was very powerful. When he grew up, he was widely known as a great warrior. He would attack and defeat the armies of his enemies without aid from any person. His spear was like a mighty weapon, sometimes piercing a host of enemies, and sometimes putting aside all opposition when he thrust it into the ranks of his opponents. If he had thrown his spear, and if fighting with his bare hands did not vanquish his foes, he would leap to the hillside, tear up a great tree, and with it sweep away all before him as if he were wielding a huge broom. He was known and feared throughout all the Hawaiian Islands. He became angry quickly and used his great powers very rashly. One night he lay sleeping in his royal rest house on the side of a mountain which faced the neighboring island of Oahu. Between the two islands lay a broad channel about 30 miles wide. When clouds were on the face of the sea, these islands were hidden from each other. But when they lifted, the rugged valleys of the mountains on one island could be clearly seen from the other. Even by moonlight, the shadowy lines would appear. This night, the strong man stirred in his sleep. Indistinct noises seemed to surround his house. He turned over and dropped off into slumber again. Soon he was aroused a second time, and he was awake enough to hear shouts of men far away. Louder rose the noise mixed with the roar of the great surf waves. So he realized that it came from the sea, and he then forced himself to rise and stumble to the door. He looked out towards Oahu. A multitude of lights were flashing on the sea before his sleepy eyes. A low murmur of many voices came from the place where the dancing lights seemed to be. His confused thoughts made it appear to him that a great fleet of warriors was coming from Oahu to attack his people. He blindly rushed out to the edge of a high precipice which overlooked the channel. Evidently, many boats and many people were out in the sea below. He laughed. He stooped down and tore a huge rock from its place, and this he swung back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, until he gave it a great impetus, which added to his own miraculous power, and sent it far out over the sea, and like a great cloud it rose in the heavens, and as if blown by swift winds sped on its way. Over on the shores of Oahu, a chief whose name was Kaena had called his people out for a night's fishing. Canoes large and small came from all along the coast. Torches without number had been made and placed in the canoes, and the largest fish nets had been brought. There was no need of silence. Nets had been set in the best places. Fish of all kinds were to be aroused and frightened into the nets. Flashing lights, splashing paddles, and clamor from hundreds of voices resounded all around the nets. Gradually the canoes came nearer and nearer the center. The shouting increased, and great joy ruled the house, and great joy ruled the noise which drowned the roar of the waves. Across the channel and up the mountainsides of Kauai swept the shouts of the fishing party. Into the ears of drowsy Haupu the noise forced itself. Little dreamed the excited fishermen of the effect of this on far-away Kauai. Suddenly, something like a bird, as large as a mountain, seemed to be above them, and then, with a mighty sound like the roar of winds, it descended upon them. Smashed and submerged were the canoes, when the huge boulder thrown by Haupu hurled itself upon them. The chief, Kaena, and his canoe were in the center of this terrible mass of wreckage, and he and many of his people lost their lives. The waves swept sand upon the shore, until in time a long point of land was formed. The remaining followers of the dead chief named this cape Kaena. The rock thrown by Haupu embedded itself deeply in the bed of the ocean, but its head rose far above the water, even when raging storms dashed turbulent waves against it. To this death-dealing rock, the natives gave the name Rock of Kauai, and thus for generations has the deed of the man of giant force been remembered on Oahu, and so have a cape and a rock received their names.